next module, we're going to talk about CSS basics and applying CSS to building our layout out. CSS is cascading style sheet. It's a style sheet language that we use to describe and code our presentation of our document. We have the HTML markup. Now we can take control of those elements and control the visual aspect of it. The syntax of CSS is selector based. So you have a selector and you have a property and a value. We can target HTML elements like a paragraph, and we can then change the background and set the value against it. So we could select all paragraphs, change the background to light blue, and we can change the other specific appearances of that element. CSS selectors can be HTML tag based. They can be based on IDs. They can be based on custom class that we create. So there's different various ways of selecting, and it's very flexible, and that's one of the most important pieces of CSS. Responsive design is something we're going to get to at the next module. We want to create interfaces that are not only viewable on the desktop, but also look really good on the other smaller viewports, such as mobile and tablet. Element selectors are very powerful. We can select in our CSS all paragraphs, all div tags in our application, and then we can apply styles. We can override the default behavior that comes from the browser. We can also combine element selectors. We can select all the divs, and then using another comma, we can build out a way of selecting all of these elements. Instead of writing duplication, we can actually combine and create one selector for all of those elements. There is a concept of specificity that happens. There is something called the cascade that happens. And basically, the more specific a style is on an element, you will see in the dev tools, you'll see styles being overridden. For example, if you have a button, if you highlight it, you'll see that there's default styles applied by the browser. You could add a class to that, and you could change that normally gray, boring button into a very nice popping out blue button, and you would see that you could override the default behavior with a more specific selector. Class selectors is where I'm going. You can create a reusable style such as blue button, that we have something that can be maintained very easy, and then we could go through our applications and we can apply this blue style everywhere we want. So it's very flexible in a way. It's very powerful. We already have a main container. We created this in our HTML module. So now that we have this main container, now we can start to add a style to it. Or even if we just want to add some padding, center it, eventually this container that we have will be a flex container. In module 3, it's going to be responsive. But the starting of making this responsive is to work on that main container, add a class to it, and add some properties to it. We are eventually going to create that container will hold list of cryptocurrency cards. And as we progress, we're going to style that card element. We're going to add a border to it. We're going to add a drop shadow. We're going to add a hover effect. We're going to customize this design, and we're going to make it responsive. So we need to make sure best practices. We need to make sure that our names are clear, right? We want to make sure that blue button conveys what our custom class is. It's not some random or button 1, button 2, button 3. We want to make sure it's very clear and very descriptive. Modular structure, where possible, we want to make sure that we are reducing duplication. We're not repeating ourselves many times. If we can combine selectors, it's really great because you don't have to have duplication throughout your script. Separation of concerns is a big one. We have an HTML document already. Now we're going to add a separate CSS file. We're going to keep the CSS separate from the HTML. When we add JavaScript, it'll be separate as well. And then we're gearing towards mobile first. So we're going to have a responsive design, and we're going to make sure that our techniques convey a very flexible interface that adapts to our viewport and view screen. So we're going to build out this cryptocurrency tracker, and we're going to start adding CSS in this next module.